Collega Helmer, prego.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. Perhaps I can take this opportunity to respond to Mr. Claude TURMES' comments. I am not a climate denier. I do not deny that we have a climate. I do not deny that the climate changes, but we can have a debate about why it does. I do admire Claude's confidence in modelling, given that all the models of climate change suggest that increasing levels of CO2 should deliver higher global temperatures, when according to the British Met Office, in fact, for nearly 2 decades, we have seen no rise in global temperatures, despite a considerable rise, thank you very much, Claude, despite a considerable rise in CO2 over that period. Now, Mr. Turmes says that the rapporteur has assumed there are no indirect effects of these proposals. That wasn't how I heard what he said at all. He said there were indirect effects, but the science was not yet sufficiently clear to take those indirect effects as a basis for legislation. And that seems to me to be an extremely reasonable position. I congratulate the rapporteur, who I think has done as good a job as it is possible to do within the current orthodoxy of thinking within this institution. But I would say that I share the concern that has been expressed by some earlier speakers about the impact on industry and on investment and about the degree of regulatory uncertainty we're creating. We come along and we say, here is the target of 10%. We have decided in our wisdom this is what it's going to be. Therefore, go out there and invest in the appropriate industrial infrastructure to deliver 10%. Then we come back a few years later and say, well, maybe we got that wrong. Maybe we don't want 10%. Maybe we want 5% or 7% or something else. One of the main problems for industrial investment and employment in Europe at a time when we desperately need it is regulatory uncertainty. Across the renewables industry, they will tell you that they are concerned about regulatory uncertainty. Actually, I think that's rather a good thing, and if it stops people building renewables, I should be very pleased. I am less pleased in the case of the nuclear industry, who will also tell you that one of the great impediments to investment in nuclear power is regulatory uncertainty. We cannot expect industry to make major investments in these critical areas for the future of our economy if we keep chopping and changing and messing about with the rules. Now, earlier, Madam Chairman, I did remark that our rapporteur had done the best job he could within the current orthodoxy of thinking, and I would just point out a series of events which suggest that the orthodoxy may be on the point of changing. We had the excellent vote in the Parliament on backloading, which is the first time I've seen the Parliament put jobs and growth ahead of climate orthodoxy. We've had the approach by European employers and industry organisations calling on the Commission to do something about energy pricing. We've had the Council of the EU insisting that competitiveness and affordability and security of supply must start to have more emphasis at the expense of the obsession with greenery. We've had the retreat on the airline tax, which I think is an extremely good thing. There is a report in Der Spiegel, which I think certainly only came up on my computer today, I think is today, where the Commission is actually challenging German state aids, as they would say, subsidies to heavy industry, which have been necessary as a result of the very high cost of renewables. And I would just suggest to colleagues that you might like to bear in mind that in a year or 18 months we're going to see that the orthodoxy and the obsession with greenery, which has consumed this institution for a number of years, is going to start to soften. And I suspect we shall see a very considerable change in attitudes. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you.
He's a climate denier